Let's take a little stroll back in time to 16th century England. It's a foggy night. The streets are quiet, the torches flicker, and somewhere in the Tower of London, an axe is waiting. Sitting on the throne is King Henry VIII. He's not your average royal. Henry isn't just famous for his 6 wives. He's also got a reputation for removing heads like it's a hobby. Charming, well-dressed, and always up for a feast, yes. But cross him, and you just might end up missing a head. Henry ruled with power and fear. If you were on his good side, life was golden. But the moment you annoyed him, betrayed him, or just became inconvenient, he could send you to the block. And trust me, it didn't take much. He wasn't just a king. He was judge, jury, and executioner. Well, almost. He had executioners for that, of course. Professional ones. The kind who could swing clean and quick, hopefully. What's wild is that some of the people who lost their lives weren't rebels or traitors. Some were his best friends, trusted advisors, even his wives. Love, loyalty, brains. None of that could save you if Henry got suspicious. He didn't need solid proof. All he needed was a rumor or a reason. And the Tower of London, that became his personal waiting room for death. Thick stone walls, cold floors, tiny windows. You'd sit there for days, sometimes weeks, thinking about the axe that was coming. Some prisoners even practiced laying their heads down, just to be ready. Creepy, right? But here's the thing. Henry didn't just kill people for fun. Each execution sent a message. Obey me, or else. It was his way of keeping control, of showing the whole kingdom that the king's word was law. And so, the Axeman stayed busy. In this story, we're going to meet a few of the people who got a little too close to Henry and didn't live to tell the tale. Some were bold, some were innocent. All of them were caught in the shadow of the crown. So, get comfortable and maybe don't lose your head. Once upon a time, King Henry VIII fell madly in love. Not the quiet kind of love. We're talking flip the entire country upside down love. Her name? Anne Boleyn. She was bold, clever, and didn't play by the usual rules. While most ladies of the court curtsied and blushed, Anne teased Henry, challenged him, and made him chase her. He was hooked. Hard. There was just one problem. Henry was already married to Catherine of Aragon, but that didn't stop him. Nope. He spent 7 years trying to divorce Catherine so he could marry Anne. The Pope said, absolutely not. So Henry did the most Henry thing ever. He broke England away from the Catholic Church and made himself the head of a brand new one, just to get the girl. It was a royal love story with a body count. In 1533, Henry and Anne finally married. Everyone expected Anne to give birth to a son and secure the Tudor line. But when the baby came out, it was a girl, Princess Elizabeth. Henry wasn't thrilled. Then came more pregnancies, all ending in miscarriages or stillbirths. And slowly, Henry's love started to rot. The same woman he changed the church for now annoyed him. She was too opinionated, too outspoken, and most importantly, no son. So, in 1536, the king turned cold. Very cold. Anne was arrested and accused of adultery, incest, and plotting against the king. Wild accusations with zero real evidence. Historians today believe most of it was made up just to get rid of her. She was sent to the Tower of London, the same place she once watched Catherine fall from favour. The irony probably wasn't lost on her. On the morning of her execution, Anne wore a grey dress and kept her head high. She even joked with her ladies, saying the executioner was so good she wouldn't feel a thing. And she was right. A French swordsman was brought in for a swift, clean beheading. With one stroke, Anne's story ended. The woman who helped birth the English Reformation lost her life because she couldn't birth a son. Henry married his next wife just 11 days later. Love, in Henry's world, came with sharp edges. Stay tuned, because next, we're meeting a man who chose faith over fear and paid the ultimate price. Not everyone who crossed King Henry VIII did it with swords or secrets. Some did it with silence, like Sir Thomas More. Now, More wasn't some random guy. He was one of the king's closest advisors, a smart man, witty, deeply religious. And once upon a time, he and Henry were actually friends. They laughed, studied theology, and shared long talks about the future of England. But things got complicated. See, when Henry wanted to divorce Catherine of Aragon and marry Anne Boleyn, he needed the church's blessing. The Pope said no. So Henry did what Henry does. He made himself head of a brand new Church of England. Problem solved. Well, not for everyone. Sir Thomas More believed in the Catholic Church, and he believed the Pope's authority couldn't just be replaced like a pair of old socks. So when Henry asked his nobles to swear an oath accepting him as supreme head of the church, More stayed quiet. He didn't shout. He didn't protest. He just said, "No thanks." And that silence, that was enough to land him in the Tower. For over a year, Thomas More sat in a cold stone cell, separated from his family, writing letters and praying. The king gave him chance after chance to sign the oath. All he had to do was agree. But More stood firm. "I am the king's good servant," he said, "but God's first." Eventually, the king had enough. In July of 1535, More was sentenced to die for treason. On the day of his execution, he wore a simple robe. No armor, no crown, just a calm smile. He cracked a few jokes on the scaffold, because apparently gallows humor is real, and even told the executioner to aim straight, for my neck is very short. And with one swing, the man who chose his conscience over his king was gone. History remembers Sir Thomas More not as a rebel, but as a man who wouldn't bend, no matter how high the price. Henry VIII? He moved on, but the silence of that refusal echoed long after the axe fell. Next up, we meet a queen who followed in Anne Boleyn's footsteps, a little too closely. If history had a repeat button, Henry VIII definitely smashed it with Catherine Howard. She was young, really young, just a teenager when she caught the king's eye. Henry, on the other hand, was pushing 50, overweight, grumpy, and nursing a nasty leg wound that smelled like death in a boot. But hey, he was still the king. To Henry, Catherine was like spring after a long, cold winter. She was fun, flirtatious, and called him her rose without a thorn. That alone should have triggered a red flag. I mean, this guy had already beheaded one wife. No thorns, please. Anyway, they married in 1540, and for a brief moment, it seemed Henry had found happiness again. He showered Catherine with gifts, attention, and probably way too many meat pies. But Catherine had secrets, Before she met Henry, she'd had a couple of flings. Totally normal for a teenager, but not great when you're married to a paranoid king with a sword collection. Worse still, rumors started flying that she might have still been seeing one of those men even after marrying Henry. Whether it was true or not, it didn't matter. The court turned on her. Her old letters were dug up. Her past relationships became public scandal. And suddenly, the young queen was branded a traitor. She was arrested and dragged to the Tower of London, the same cold prison where Anne Boleyn had waited for her fate. Fun fact, Anne was Catherine's cousin. Guess execution really did run in the family. Catherine was terrified. According to legend, the night before her death, she asked for a chopping block to be brought to her room so she could practice laying her head down. Imagine being 19 years old and preparing for your own execution like it's a school recital. On February 13th, 1542, Catherine Howard was beheaded. No grand speeches, no clever final words, just a scared girl who got too close to a dangerous man. And Henry? He mourned. Briefly. Then he got married again. Because why not? The ghost of Anne Boleyn had returned and vanished once more. Coming up next, the blood stops flowing, but the fear sticks around. Let's talk about the legacy Henry left behind. By the end of his life, Henry VIII had buried 6 wives, 2 trusted advisors, and more nobles than anyone cared to count. The axe had swung many times, and behind every swing was a message: no one is untouchable. But here's the twist. The blood stopped, but the fear didn't. Henry died in 1547, bloated, bitter, and barely able to walk. But his legacy? That stuck around like a ghost in the halls of Hampton Court. England had changed. Forever. His break from the Catholic Church, his marriages, and yes, his many executions had reshaped religion, politics, and even the idea of monarchy. Future kings and queens would remember. Henry didn't just rule with a crown. He ruled with a chopping block. The Tower of London, once just a fortress, became a symbol of royal power and punishment. Tourists visit it now, but back then, walking through its gates usually meant your days were numbered. People whispered its name like it had teeth, and those who lost their lives under Henry, they became legends. Anne Boleyn, the queen who gave him a daughter and lost her head. Thomas More, the man who chose God over king. Catherine Howard, the teenager caught in a grown man's deadly game. Their stories live on, told in history books, whispered in bedtime tales, and now on YouTube, of all places. But maybe the most chilling part of all this? Henry didn't think he was being cruel. In his mind, he was protecting the kingdom, keeping order, doing what a king had to do. The executions weren't just punishment, they were performance. Big, public events meant to scare people into loyalty. And they worked, for a while. So when we talk about Henry VIII, it's not just about wives and divorces and fancy dinners. It's about power, the kind that cuts both ways. And the axe, it became more than a weapon. It became a symbol of how quickly love turns to fear, and how, in Henry's world, even a crown couldn't save you. Now, close your eyes. Picture the tower at night, the fog, the silence, the echo of footsteps that aren't really there. The axe is gone, but the shadow it left, One crown, one betrayal. If you made it this far, you're one of the few who still listens to history. Subscribe for more stories they tried to bury.